For one of the four classes I took this semester, one was History of Sports, 324, which was taught a lot about history of sports in general, especially boxing, a lot of emphasis on boxing, and Joe Louis and Max Schmeling fight, how it was racially divided, with Schmeling being a Nazi and a follower of Hitler, and Joe Louis from Detroit being was a black American fighting, and how he really wasn't given full appreciation for his victory with the heavyweight title. And then we learned about baseball. Some learned more about basketball too, and then we learned some about football. And lastly, we learned about women's sports and how they were discriminated against and how they couldn't play many sports, as well as the business of sports. So for this final project, I have to interview someone over 50, and you happen to be over 50. So I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Okay, let's go.
Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm 53 years old. I'm married with 3 children. I was born and raised in Garden City, Michigan, which is a middle-class neighborhood. Lots of kids in the neighborhood, lots of kids to play sports with, so we were outside all the time.
Okay. What has been the greatest change in American sports since you were a child?
Well, probably the money that's being paid to the athletes. There's more sports that are available out there, and the money is just running wild. Those athletes make a ton of money for what they do, and back then, they didn't make as much money back then. I think that they were more like us, more like the average person out there, and we could relate to them more.
Speak up a little bit.
And we could relate to them more, and compared to now, how athletes like to be treated and referred to like stars.
Do you think they deserve the money that they are getting?
I think they deserve some money, but I think that they are more than well overpaid. And I think in perspective, compared to what the president makes and what doctors make, I think they are more than well overpaid. I think they need to bring that back down in line again.
To what standards? Like doctors?
Yes. I mean, they're just playing a sport. That's a recreation. I know that they bring in a lot of money for their owners and their sponsors, but I think that it's just out of proportion now.
Well, I mean, I could see your point of view with that being that they're paid a lot, but on the other hand, doctors are professionals, and so are NBA players. They are, for instance, they are professionals as well. They're one of very few to excel to that level. So, I mean, do you think that?
Why should they make $5 million when a doctor's making $200,000 and he's saving lives, and yet they're playing and they're getting their expenses paid for all their travel, and they have somebody cooking for them, doing their laundry, and
Right.
yeah.
Okay. When did you first know you were interested in sports?
I played sports my whole life, growing up in a middle-class neighborhood like that. We were always home. Nobody went anywhere during the day, so at least 4 or 5 kids per house would be outside from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night and playing sports like mostly baseball, some dodgeball, kickball, not really basketball. I don't remember anybody having a basketball hoop that was in our neighborhood. So it was mostly baseball that we played in a field behind our house, and some ice skating.
What did you start, do you think?
Probably 6, 7, 8 years old, always playing sports. I grew up, I had 3 older brothers, so I was introduced to sports at an early age.
Okay. What sports did you play? Like what did you play in, like, school?
In school, I played softball. There was a girls' team in the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then I also played basketball, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It was the Catholic CYO League. But when I transferred over to public school in the 9th grade, there was not a basketball team or a softball team for girls. So I didn't play for that whole year.
So in the Catholic school, you got to play sports, but in
Yes.
the public, there wasn't very many teams for sports?
There wasn't a team. There wasn't any team for the girls in 9th grade. There's not a basketball team or a softball team.
And what year was that?
That would have been probably around 1972.
So what was your favorite sport to play?
Favorite sport to play was softball.
Please continue to speak up.
Okay. My favorite sport was softball. I enjoyed playing the teamwork with all the girls on the team, and traveling to the games, which meant when we traveled, we didn't take a bus or a car, pretty much we walked to every game because the schools were around there. Sometimes we would have maybe a parent drive here and there, but usually we would walk a mile to Edward Hines Park, where was our home team and our home field, and we would play there.
What was your favorite sport to watch on TV?
I liked basketball. I liked the fast pace of National Basketball League, so the NBA. I enjoyed watching that a lot, and probably baseball. Baseball was very popular back then in the '60s.
What was more covered on TV, basketball or baseball?
Well, probably, I don't know, probably baseball, I guess. And the good thing with baseball is we would always listen to it on the radio as well. So we would listen to Ernie Harwell as he would broadcast the game. So if we were outside washing the car or doing something outside, we'd always have the game on.
Okay. Who was the most important athlete when you were young, or who was your favorite athlete?
Well, on baseball, probably was the Detroit Tigers. It was Al Kaline, seemed to be everybody's favorite. And he was the first player, I think, on the Tigers to sign for $100,000. And everybody thought that was huge money back then.
Okay. What year was that?
That would have probably been in the 60s, I think.
Okay. Okay. How are sports different now than they were? How are sports different now than they were back then?
Well, right now, it's just a big business. Sports are just huge. They're all over. They're on day and night. They're being covered that, they're making a lot more money, so the advertisers are paying more, and they're on all the channels. I don't remember, maybe there would be a game on, we would watch the Tiger game, but I don't remember seeing any other teams playing. Like now you can catch a game on any channel, watching any team pretty much. Pretty much back then we just watched our local teams.
Okay.
So not as much money back then. Now tons of money, costs you a lot more to get in to watch a game. Makes it pretty unaffordable for a lot of families to go to a game nowadays.
Not me, but what was the most exciting game you saw or played in?
Well, what comes to mind is the '84 World Series where Kirk Gibson hit the home run. Your dad and I were there, and that was really exciting. And everybody rushed onto the field when he won the game with that home run. And all over history books, when you talk about the Tigers, there's always a picture of Kirk Gibson with his arms out like that after he had hit the home run when he's going around the bases.
How about the other World Series Detroit won?
'68 World
Yes.
Series. I was 11 years old, so I remember that, and that was right after the riots in Detroit. And I was kind of young to remember that, but I do remember a lot of the players there, like Denny McLean and Jim Northrup,
Who we
who
know.
recently passed. Yeah, and there was Norm Cash and Mickey Stanley, who lives in Brighton. So it was a very good team back then, and they were gentlemen back then. But I remember the World Series as being exciting and the whole town rallying behind the team.
Okay. How has the preparation for a game changed over the years? Like, do you think like professional athletes today, like LeBron and D Wade, like prepare less than they do for games as opposed to back then, even though they're paid more money? Do you think they're more nonchalant about the practice and preparation for the game? Like, for instance, AI saying, practice. I don't need to practice because I'm
Right.
that good.
Right.
Like, think they're more.
Yeah, they kind of take their talent in the game for granted sometimes compared to, like, I remember Al Kaline and those Tigers having a very good work ethic, showing up for practice, being respectful. You don't remember reading or hearing anything like that unless it just wasn't covered. Right now, the attitudes of the athletes seem to think that they're just above, just what happened in the NBA Finals. Now they're turning on each other, where D Wade and LeBron are making fun of Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah.
Yeah, saying that he, was faking that he was sick. That was never done like that before. I just think that they just think they're above everything. They just think they're stars, and that's how they want to be treated. And it's kind of taken away from just playing the game.
Do you think they prepare like physically harder than they do now?
It seems like it's a faster game. Basketball seems to be faster than it was before. Now they have all their massages that they
Yeah.
have. They have people that are babying them day and night. Physical therapy, massages, heat wraps, and all that maybe they didn't do as much before. I think they're good players. They have a lot of talent. I just think that they just think they're above everybody else, and and maybe they don't take it as seriously, and maybe not as work as much on the off season as the
Yeah.
others did. Yeah.
Have the relationships between the teams and the fans changed? I know in Detroit, it's always been amazing for sports and the fans. Like the fans are dedicated and the players are dedicated, even from the bad boys up until, probably 2008. Pistons fans were dedicated to being there at every game, and they sold out over 100 consecutive games. Do you think this? It's not like this, obviously, in other states, but
Right.
do you think it's there's more loyalty to the teams and the fans back then than there is now?
I think people, are really loyal to their team, especially in Detroit. Detroit's a big sports team and sports town, and people still follow the Lions, which amazes me, as bad as they've been for all these years. But they are huge. I mean, they still have a ton of people that go to the game and still wear all the hats and the T-shirts. I think the money and all that advertising is increased a lot. College, you'll see people, they'll support different college teams, different pro teams. So the money in the advertising and the merchandise has gone up quite a bit. I think there's a big following out there. And Detroit just happens to be a huge sports town, so we notice it more here than, like you're saying, in other parts of the country.
Like for instance, with the Detroit Pistons winning the 03-04 championship, even after that, they always had fans. Whereas in 2006, Miami Heat won the NBA title, and the year after, the seats seemed to be less filled until this year when they brought LeBron James and Chris Bosh, and now
Well,
the
compared
seats.
to like the Palace, how
Yeah.
many years did it just sell out? Every game
Yeah.
was sold out,
Yeah.
sold out, sold out. So people did continue
Yeah.
to follow them. You're right.
And how has money changed sports over your lifetime? Like for instance, do you think they're paid too much?
Yeah, I think I've covered that a couple times because it really gets me that they're paid so much like that. But I think they can still work hard and make a good living and do a good job and provide a lot of entertainment for their fans without paying that exorbitant amount. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the next star signs the next biggest package and bonuses. I just don't think it's necessary for all that.
Yeah, in the 1930s, there was a specific team called the Chicago Black Sox who were underpaid. They're very underpaid roster. That's how it was back in baseball. It was actually adapted into a movie called Eight Men Out, starring Charlie Sheen and John Cusack, and it basically depicted how the 1930s Chicago Black Sox took money from gamblers because they weren't receiving enough from their owner, and it just shows the disparity for money back then. Even though you're
Oh,
a
right.
professional, you were not getting
You didn't
paid
make
nearly
much
as
at all. No, it was more in line with
Yeah.
what other people were making. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about like the issues with drugs in sports and with like steroids, for instance, now as opposed to back then? Like
Well-
Barry Bonds. Mark
Well, did they
McGwire.
have any record of athletes taking steroids years ago? I mean, all those athletes that set all those records, they did it with just hard work and their natural talent. So now you get guys like Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire coming in and breaking all those records, but that's not legit because they were on such drugs, to make their body more enhanced to hit those home runs. It takes away from the record.
Right.
It cheapens it, and now they've been stripped of some of their
Yeah.
awards. So I think people are starting to realize that it's not all about hitting the most. It's about just using your God-given talent and doing the best that you can and then be awarded for that.
Okay. Okay, all right. So, what do you think about the development of women's sports? And I think like in the late 1990s, the WNBA was officially created and was publicized, even though they don't receive the same amount of, or have the same target audience as the NBA does. Do you think they will? Do you think this is a good first step for like?
Well, I think it's a good step, but I don't know if it's ever going to take off. I don't think it'll ever reach the men's popularity. I've taken your sister to a couple of the women's games, WNBA games
At the
down there
Palace.
at the Palace. There's nobody there. There might be a few people in a couple of the sections, but it pales in comparison. There might be a couple, 3,000 people there.
3,000 as opposed to 40,000.
Yeah, every night, right. So there's nobody there. It's good that the women are getting a chance to finally play, but I've heard that they barely make anything when they play in the WNBA, that on the off season they have to go overseas to play, just so that they can make enough money to support themselves. So the money, they're not